Good evening. Well, now we have something like a program that we can work with these next few months and note specifically the degree of our progress. You know, for a long time in our study and our work, it's folly to talk about progress just because we happen to know a little more truth this week than we did last week, or a few more statements of truth this week than we knew last week. Because that really isn't progress. Certainly not spiritual progress. It may be progress toward progress. In other words, the more truth we know, certainly the more we are preparing ourselves for a change of consciousness. But progress as such doesn't begin until a change of consciousness really begins. The progress doesn't begin with just the amount of truth we know. The progress begins when the truth we know begins to appear as a changed consciousness. Progress from the absolute standpoint is impossible because I and my Father are already one. All that the Father hath is already mine. I am already immortal and eternal. Therefore, there's no possibility of spiritual progress. But there can be a progress in demonstrating that which I am, or in the degree of the bringing forth, manifestation of that absolute statement. Scripture says no man can see God or hath seen God and lived. Certainly no individual, except in moments of sublime realization, ever attained the fullness of the Godhead bodily. The Master spoke out from that absolute consciousness when he said, "Thou seest me, thou seest the Father that sent me." And when he said, "I am the life and I am the resurrection." But you can be assured that when he was speaking that way, he was in the very height of spiritual realization. He was at the peak of divine realization when he, as the Son of Man, disappeared to his own consciousness, and he stood forth as the Son of God. All mystics attain moments of that realization. I've called to your attention the fact of the English mystic who said, "Before God was, I am." When he said that, or felt it, or realized it, or wrote it, he had attained the ultimate of spiritual attainment, because he meant then that I am I. Before Abraham was, I am. And in that moment he stood forth as I. There have been many mystics attain that for brief moments. No one is on record as having attained it as a permanent life or a permanent way of life. Those, like the Master, who attained it at times had their periods in between, like 40 days in the wilderness, 40 days in meditation, fasting, and prayer, and other occasions that are indicated. when his consciousness was not at that complete level. Therefore, we attain our spiritual realization progressively and in a measure. Some more, some less, some more at times, so on. The progress, then, does not come or cannot be measured merely by how much truth we know. But after we have known all of the possible truth and worked with it, lived with it, slept with it, demonstrated, practiced, and bit by bit come into moments of realization and attainment, that is when our progress is shown forth. You saw one of those experiences last Friday night. You witnessed such an experience when I was completely absent from the meeting. And that which governs, that which has sent forth the infinite way into expression, was in full possession of that chair. The message that came through Friday night was not from me, it was through me. And it did more for me than for anyone in that room, I can assure you, because from that moment I have had another rebirth. Let us call that then a progressive step. Now, the way that these periods of unfoldment and attainment and progress have come to me have been bit by bit, by the realization of one statement of truth here, another statement of truth there. Sometimes a period of enlightenment and upliftment that has lasted for days and weeks, and sometimes months. You have heard me speak of this as plateaus. And in between these plateaus, there are valleys. It is possible, because of the infinite nature of truth, that before a higher experience can come to us, we must unburden some of what we think of as truth, some of our concepts, and this may cause valley experiences. In other words, we do not like to let go of forms. No one does. Each one of us likes to cling to a form. And not only one form, many forms. We want to cling to the idea of health as we know it. A heart that beats so much, lungs, liver, all of these organs that operate this regularly and thus regularly. We all have that tendency to cling to form. When we think of supply, we always think in terms of dollars or pounds or whatever our national currency may be, not realizing that that isn't supply at all. And yet, how we cling to those forms. So it is, we're always clinging to the form we are acquainted with, and thereby often lose the opportunity for attaining the spirit of the form. Therefore, much of our progress is really painful, because it is a taking away from us of the forms to which we've held. Now, we are going to work in these next few months from the plateau of our Friday night session. We started the London Close class with a proposition, Moses' problem. The Red Sea in front of us, Pharaoh's army in back of us, and now get out of that. If you took that seriously, if you took that problem home with you, if you measured your own problem alongside of that and found that in some measure you are in the same situation as Moses was, the Red Sea in front, impossible to pass. No human means known of crossing the Red Sea. Nothing visible, nothing within sight, nothing within the realm of the mind's thoughts that could possibly find a way across the Red Sea. And no possibility of turning back because Pharaoh's army is right there at the back. Now, in the human scene, at some time in our experience, most of us get into that fix. If it isn't wholly that severe, at times it comes near to it. And of course, humanity has a way of either falling by the wayside and giving up, or trying to fight back, trying to strike out at that ocean and beat a pathway through it, which is harder to do than swimming the English Channel. And that's difficult enough. Or others turn around and try to fight their way through Pharaoh's army. And that's hard too. And so the question comes, is there a way out? And often the answer is no. Humanly, no. Humanly, there isn't a chance of anything happening that can bring me out of this situation in which I find myself, or half a dozen situations. Those who turn to the spiritual path, and certainly more especially those who are on the path of the infinite way, must say to themselves, if there isn't a human way out, there certainly must be a spiritual way out. Either this whole religious idea of a God, a spirit, of Christ, is wrong, and we're just wasting time trying to find a religious solution to life, or else there must be something to it. If there is something to it, it cannot be something for some certain special people, because if it's spiritual, it must be for everyone, at least everyone who can attain that spiritual realization. And that is where we come in with our problem of the Red Sea before us, Pharaoh's army in back of us. How do we get out? And on Friday night, we saw the way out. We saw that the Red Sea isn't a Red Sea. It's as much of an illusion as a lake on a desert. Pharaoh's army isn't an army. It's as much of an illusion as a city that appears to be in the middle of a desert. In other words, that which we are fearing isn't a reality, and it doesn't have to be overcome. We don't have to fight our way through it or rise above it. The Master gave us a formula. Ye shall know the truth. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free.